Hello everybody and welcome to Amphlett Reviews for the first impressions and early access to the V Cinema Essentials box set, Bullets and Betrayal, coming out officially on the 20th of April 2025 on Arrow Video. This is an early collaboration with Arrow Video. Thank you very much. And I have some test discs to dive into, which features the actual films themselves and all the special features included. So this video is essentially a bit of a deep dive into that and to give you guys a bit of a sneak peek on what to expect from the set and to see what you like to do going forward, whether you like to purchase the set officially or check it out on the streaming services, on the Arrow Video. It's entirely up to you. Hopefully these videos will be informative and helpful. And each video is going to be diving into my thoughts and opinions on the special features and on the film itself, and to give you guys a bit more insight into what to expect from this box set. If you have seen the film prior to this release, please comment down below. I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions. And for today's video, we're talking about the first disc, Crime Hunter Bullets of Rage, released in 1989. I will be talking about the second film in a separate video. The reason for this is because I want to keep these videos in a reasonable amount of length, try and be as informative as I can as possible, and to allow a bit of freedom in terms of my discussion and things I want to talk about and discuss on the special features and on the actual film itself, and to be a bit more freeing ultimately. So I hope you guys don't mind that. So let's start with the movie review and then dive into the special features following. Now the first film part of this V Cinema collection is Crime Hunter Bullets of Rage, released in 1989 as mentioned, directed by Timiche, which I can't quite pronounce his full name, which I'm not going to attempt. I'm going to butcher it. Really terrible pronunciation, so I do apologize. A bit of a context and time frame for this being 1989. This was released at the same time as Die Hard and Hong Kong Cinema's infamous Better Tomorrow, which would be the kind of the groundwork and the kind of the examples of what the special features would dive into. I will cross between some of my special features discussion with the actual movie review to kind of give some context in terms of what was going on during the time and how this film was put together. But I will do more of a deep dive into the specific special features as I go on in a separate portion of this video. So in terms of the film itself, if you would call it a film, it is 58 minutes. This is more like a short film, less than a feature film, which is known to be about 90 minutes. The aim and the approach for this from Toei, which is the production company that were producing and making all those Yakuza films from Kenji Fukasaku's Battle of Honor. Interesting enough during the time period, and something that I've discussed in previous videos in terms of my journey within Japanese cinema, is that during this portion time now, with the late 70s going into the end of the 80s, going into the 90s now, the Japanese kind of cinema was starting to kind of a bit stale, it was getting a bit tiresome, and the brooding kind of, Yakuza kind of, stoic kind of films that Kenji Fukasaku would, basically defined and made his best kind of masterpieces, I would say, within the Battle of Honor collection, was at the top of his game and no one could really top it. And the action genre space within Japanese cinema was getting really stale and really kind of forgotten about on the wayside. And this is something that the groundwork for Better Tomorrow and Die Hard, those kind of films, are mentioned as so prominent within this film and the inspiring nature from it essentially, and what the director's intention was to make this film. Now, to give a little bit of context further on this, in terms of Toei, they want to dive into the kind of video, basically market, straight to video, home demand. They basically took Kenji Fukasaku's Battle of Honor collection, all those movies, and basically put them onto VHS. And what were happening is people were renting these films or buying these films and fast forwarding them. They were kind of running over an hour and a half film, maybe 2 hours, and they're kind of getting through these films very, very quickly. The aim and the objective behind the runtime for this, in terms of Crime Hunter being 58 minutes, is to create a non-fast forward film. A quote from the Toei producer that's very relevant and very on point to what this little 58-minute short film, essentially what it is and how it delivers in terms of the VHS straight to home media, is fast, delicious, and cheap. A very relevant kind of quote, something that I think it just sums up what Crime Hunter is and what it's delivering and what's offering you in terms of a viewer, and being something that is quite different compared to the traditional Yakuza-based films, tiresome and stale, and basically just kind of not offering anything new or interesting. Something that I've dived into in previous reviews, and where a lot of them are very rinse and repeat, are just different takes on the same type of story. Kenji Fukasaku has his blueprint films in terms of the characters, and he will change things up here and there, but they always start the same, always have the same middle act, and they always end in doom and gloom at the end as well. Where this film, in terms of the approach and the attitude, is to create something that is fast, fun, entertainment, light, and just kind of give you what you want. And that is some guns and some bad guys and some good guys. Very simple, very simplistic overall in terms of execution, but delivers, and it's a lot of fun. It's a real nice, breezy, less than an hour feature that you can get. And it doesn't surprise me the director would do 2 more follow-ups later on, being the fact the budget for this film was under $500,000 in terms of US dollars, and it made a lot of money on the direct-to-home media demand. And this was the first, if not mistaken, the very first V-Cinema on-demand direct-to-home media VHS level kind of release for that time. And it definitely packs a punch for sure. And I gotta say, going in without any expectations, keeping an open mind, already having that kind of mindset, these are cheaper films, straight to video home demand. These were designed for a very specific kind of quick, easy cash grab, but seeing what the creativity behind it, seeing what these directors would do with a small little budget, and to see what kind of movies I would get in return for that. And I wasn't expecting a Hollywood production, I wasn't expecting a Kenji Fukusaka epic. I got a lot more out of this than I bargained for, essentially. Crime Hunter is a really fun, breezy, super 80s cheesy kind of, you know, cliche throwback to those films. It feels like a high budget TV episode in some ways. You know, it's a 4:3 aspect ratio. It also reminds me of a bit of a Miami Vice type thing. Just kind of get those vibes from it. The basic story for the film is you've got 2 cops. One of them gets killed in terms of a crossfire between a bunch of gangs that are basically after a character called Bruce, which has basically stolen $5 million from a church, and they basically want that money. Basically, the partner is basically angry, pissed off, tracking down Bruce, trying to find him because he stole the money as responsible for his partner's death. You've got a nun, which gets involved, which is very kind of, you know, Miss 45 kind of aspect kind of thing, if you've seen that film, in terms of the nun with the gun, which is pretty awesome in terms of her character being introduced. She basically gets involved in this because she has some connection between Bruce and the kind of cop character, and through this very simple kind of film is a series of guns and explosions, unexpected kind of reveals as the film goes along. It's very simple, it's very well delivered, it's very well put together for a kind of a runtime that it is. Not to mention some great practical effects, some blood squibs, and just some really kind of violent moments that do tend to play out during the film, which I think is very effective and very fun and very surprising, and just, as the producer said, fast, delicious and cheap. It's exactly what it says on the tin. It definitely delivers that comfort food for an hour film. But I actually really had a really good time with this. I think this is a really nice little introduction to the V-Cinema box set. I think you're gonna have a really good time. Nothing to overthink about, nothing to get too complicated about. But I really hope there's an opportunity to check out those 2 sequels, potentially on a follow-up box set if this one does quite well. So hopefully there's something down the line to be considered. So that's the movie review. Let's dive into the special features. We have a brand new filmed introduction to the film by Japanese film critic Masanori Sera. We have a wonderful extra on the edition called Crime Hunter and the Dawn of the V-Cinema, a brand new video essay on Crime Hunter Bullets of Rage by Japanese cinema film expert Tom Mees. And we have my favorite extra for Crime Hunter Bullets of Rage. We have Loose Cannon, a newly filmed interview with Crime Hunter Bullets of Rage director talking about his film and his experience making it many years ago. Not to mention the standard trailers that are available for both films on the disc. Now, all the special features related to Crime Hunter all have a very similar kind of theme in mind in terms of exploring the kind of the late 70s going into the 90s in terms of the movie-going experience between Japanese cinema, in terms of people just not turning up, Japanese cinema being quite stale, trying to find new avenues to create kind of profit and capture audiences, because the big movies that were doing well, like Jaws, Die Hard, Bear Tomorrow, all the foreign cinema films, and being at that point, Kenji Fukusaka basically dominated and created some of the best Yakuza films of his kind of lineup, his collection, so much so that basically there was nothing more to go for, and the kind of the action space for kind of Japanese cinema was getting a bit boring, a bit stale, and a bit samey, essentially, compared to something like, you know, Bear Tomorrow and John Woo being so massive and dominant, and Die Hard being one of the biggest action films of all time. You can understand why this would be a kind of a struggling kind of time period, and being the fact that VHS was a new booming market, something that Japanese were exploring and doing way before Sony did. Interesting kind of aspect that the kind of the extras talk about, this idea of a cancelled anime show that was only did about 4 episodes. They would split it into kind of individual VHS releases, or make them into a kind of a smaller feature and sell as a package. This idea of creating profit within, if you can make a film just purely for direct home media entertainment. You can create 100% profit where you're not sharing it with the other distribution companies, or you're not kind of subletting it to a cinema. This idea of creating more profits and having relatively more cheaper films for half the budget and having more kind of cash flow coming through, whether it does well or not, whether they're renting it, whether they're buying it, and this idea of, you know, selling the VHS, selling the kind of VHS player, selling the concept of owning the film, or seeing something that maybe you couldn't see in cinemas, creating more kind of specific, kind of more raunchier titles, something that are a bit shorter, whether it's anime, whether it's kind of more pink films, whether it's more violent movies, something that was explored within the extras, this idea of once the Battle Without Honor collection was finished in cinemas, they would show these kind of films on marathons on the VHS, and people would rent these or buy these, and they would skip forward. And this created a new lineup for a Toei company called the V Cinema, Victory Cinema, which was basically a series of films that were done relatively on the cheap for half the budget. This film, for example, was under $500,000 in terms of US dollars, and it made a lot of money in terms of rentals and purchases. Follow-up special features in terms of the video essay dives into more behind the scenes at the time and other titles that were kind of, you know, making money for kind of Toei that, you know, during that kind of time period, and how Crime Hunter fits into that category. And now my absolute favorite extra tying into Crime Hunter is the kind of 20-minute extra, give or take, from the director. It's a brand new 2025 interview from the director, being a very open, transparent, and just being kind of very honest about his experience making the film in terms of Crime Hunter, and what the kind of the attitude was, what the vision was versus what it is now. And it's one of my favorite extras that I've seen in quite some time, because being the fact he was given an opportunity because he already had a script kind of ready to go essentially, but it wasn't quite finished, it wasn't the best, it had a lot of flaws in it, and basically giving an opportunity by Toei to direct this kind of very cheap film. And you know, the fact that he talks about the locations, he talks about some of the actors involved, and being the fact that he hired the woman involved in the film because she was part of a commercial that he really liked, and the fact that he talks about the actor's experience, how stressed he was. There was a communication issue between him and his crew, and it's an interesting kind of honest kind of reflection of what was going on during that time, and how a young, inexperienced, fresh and hungry kind of director just wanted to make this really kind of ambitious kind of vision for action set pieces and not worry too much about the story. And as you mentioned, the kind of the character motivations and the kind of the architect of the characters will just come from visual kind of, you know, scenes and kind of just minimal dialogue in terms of just moving the plot along. But the focus and the aim was to create these kind of action set pieces through the kind of the gunplay and the explosions. And he talks about it very honestly in terms of like, I didn't know how to do it. He didn't know how to do special effects or practical effects, and he figured it out as he went along. He was experimenting and playing around with guns, and talks about the gun very similar to kind of Hong Kong cinema. Guns would jam, there would be different types of sound effects with automatic weapons, this reload, and to play around with different types of, you know, explosions and practical effects, and having this kind of fake skin. And it's just a really interesting kind of deep dive into his kind of thinking during that time, which led to some creative differences and communication issues with his crew, because he was never part of a professional set. He just wanted to turn up. It's a very hopeful and inspiring message to other amateur filmmakers that wanted to get into this space, and it's a very kind of, you know, honest reflection of his work for Crime Hunter, and talks about the sequels as well going forward. So that's been my thoughts and opinions on Crime Hunter Bullets of Rage in terms of the feature film itself and the special features. What are your thoughts and opinions, guys? Please comment down below. So in the meantime, guys, Amphlett Reviews, signing out.